That is not a conservative position, my friends. My politics have not changed, but I am reacting to politics that have. And this is yet another example of how the woke invert the very thing that used to make liberals liberals. Olympic surfing exposes whitewashed native Hawaiian roots. Yeah, the Olympics added surfing this year. Good. Surfers deserve to be recognized as athletes. I'm sorry. What I meant to say is, no, that's cultural appropriation. The AP says that for Hawaiians, probably all two of them, including surfing in the Olympics is an extension of the racial indignity seared into the history of the game and their homeland when white outsiders took over their spiritual art form. Or just people having fun in the ocean.
So it's not only Hollywood that has become a battlefield in the culture wars. The world of sports has also found itself pulled into the same storm. In recent years, multiple athletes and major sports figures have faced backlash and controversy simply for declining to conform to what critics describe as woke expectations. But Bill Maher wasn't willing to go along quietly. He cut straight through the debate with sharp, unapologetic commentary, delivering a moment that quickly stood out. As always, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that button, and let's jump right into the discussion.
The director of the opening ceremony was fired hours before the event because they found out there was a Holocaust joke in a comedy routine he did decades ago. Well, you know, context is everything. Obviously, it didn't strike people as beyond the pale at the time. Young people have to stop flattering themselves that they're Nostradamus and would have foreseen, had they been around then, everything that's unacceptable now. And for further context, Mel Brooks wrote one of the most successful musicals of all time around the song Springtime for Hitler.
The so-called woke crowd has a reputation for holding on to grievances and rarely letting them fade. It's as if they are constantly scanning the horizon for the next controversy. And they're methodical, extremely methodical. They comb through years of social media posts, archived interviews, long-forgotten comments, and even private exchanges, searching persistently for material they can elevate into a scandal. The age of the statement doesn't matter, and context often takes a back seat. All it takes is a single sentence, one joke, or one remark that can be reframed and amplified. Once that happens, the outrage cycle moves quickly. A person's entire career can be overshadowed by one resurfaced moment preserved online. That's what unfolded in the case involving a director connected to the Olympic Games. Critics searched relentlessly for something to challenge him with, and eventually they found what they considered their evidence. When they did, they ensured it spread far beyond its original setting.
Do we allow the people who just want to always win? Days before that firing, the opening ceremony's musical director was also forced out because someone dug up an interview with him from 1994 where he admitted to bullying classmates as a child. As a child. Remember when your teacher used to try and scare you by saying, "This is going to go on your permanent record"? Yeah, no longer an empty threat now.
These critics rarely ease up until they've shifted the full force of public opinion against their target. They continue pressing, investigating, and magnifying every controversy until a person's reputation feels dangerously fragile. Very little is considered off-limits. They'll revisit your history, resurface early missteps, and even spotlight things said or done in childhood to strengthen their argument. Context becomes secondary, personal growth is overlooked, and the passage of time is dismissed. What ultimately matters is sustaining the storyline they want circulating in the present moment. The contradiction is hard to miss. Many behave as though their own pasts were spotless, as if they never made an ill-advised joke, spoke carelessly, or experienced moments of immaturity. Their history is quietly polished, while yours is scrutinized in microscopic detail. The expectation becomes absolute perfection, an impossible standard that few, if any, have ever truly met themselves.
Creative director of the entire shebang of the whole Olympics got shit-canned because he once made a fat joke in a private conversation. This is called a purge. It's a mentality that belongs in Stalin's Russia. How bad does this atmosphere we are living in have to get before the people who say cancel culture is overblown admit that is in fact an insanity that is swallowing up the world? Where did we get this crowd? I'm back, not the audience. I'm back. They're still. And that is not a conservative position, my friends. My politics have not changed, but I am reacting to politics that have. And this is yet another example of how the woke invert the very thing that used to make liberals liberals. Snitches and that's not being liberal.
Bill Maher doesn't soften his language when addressing what he describes as the woke mob. He portrays them as modern-day informants, lingering in the background and searching for material they can use to publicly shame and dismantle someone's reputation. In Maher's assessment, the issue is no longer justice or accountability. It's about influence. It's about catching a misstep, archiving it, and releasing it strategically to generate maximum backlash. He maintains that this pattern doesn't reflect traditional liberal principles, even though it often emerges from within liberal spaces. In his view, classic liberalism emphasized tolerance, open dialogue, and the freedom for individuals to change over time. But this newer strain, he argues, functions differently. Rather than inviting discussion, it closes it off. Instead of fostering understanding, it insists on conformity. Maher ultimately contends that what's unfolding isn't liberalism in its original sense, but something far more rigid and reactionary.
Associated Press is a real news organization, yeah? So why am I reading this headline? Olympic surfing exposes whitewashed native Hawaiian roots. Yeah, the Olympics added surfing this year. Good, surfers deserve to be recognized as athletes. I'm sorry. What I meant to say is, no, that's cultural appropriation. The AP says that for Hawaiians, probably all two of them, including surfing in the Olympics, is an extension of the racial indignity seared into the history of the game and their homeland when white outsiders took over their spiritual art form. Or just people having fun in the ocean.
It can feel almost ironic how some activists have become highly skilled at reinterpreting nearly everything. Simple moments, people laughing, unwinding, or enjoying a day at the beach, are suddenly reframed as something layered with political or cultural meaning. What once seemed like harmless fun is analyzed and recast as a symbolic statement about society. The argument is often wrapped in elevated, academic-sounding language with carefully selected phrases designed to appear insightful and convincing at first glance. Yet when the heavy terminology and dramatic framing are removed, the substance beneath can seem surprisingly thin. It becomes presentation over practicality, rhetoric over reality. The objective often appears less about clarifying issues and more about shaping perception. Through amplified wording, routine situations are transformed into headline-worthy controversies. And in the end, what is introduced as a profound cultural moment can sometimes amount to far less than the build-up suggests.
Of all the violations of the woke penal code, cultural appropriation just might be the dumbest of all. First of all, there are 25,000 islands in the Pacific. How do we know a Hawaiian was the first to stand on a board in the water? It seems like something anyone in any ocean would eventually get around to. And if you're a surfer, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, or in between. You all taste the same to sharks.
Bill Maher contends that the intense focus on cultural appropriation often unravels when examined closely. He asks why appreciation is increasingly framed as wrongdoing, particularly in a world that has never been more globally connected. Today, cultures continuously influence one another through music, fashion, cuisine, and art. And that exchange has long been a driver of human development. People tend to adopt aspects they admire not to erase their origins, but to honor and engage with them. Maher argues that this cultural blending is more frequently an expression of respect than of disrespect. It reflects curiosity, admiration, and an openness to experiences beyond one's own background. Yet critics, he says, often interpret these interactions as transgressions rather than opportunities for mutual understanding. In his view, restricting cultural exchange does not safeguard tradition. It confines it, preserving it in isolation and diminishing the shared human interaction that allows culture to evolve and remain vibrant.
Say a Hawaiian did invent surfing. Should he or she have kept it to themselves? Most of human history is a horror story, but the good parts are about different groups coming together and sharing. It's sort of the whole point of the Olympics, which itself comes from Greece, where wrestling was invented as a way for completely heterosexual men to get to know each other. Badminton has roots in India. Tennis comes from France. Skiing from Scandinavia and Taekwondo from Korea. Judo was appropriated from the Far East and skateboarding from the far out.
Bill Maher argues that simply because a community originates or invents something doesn't mean it has to remain exclusively within that community forever. Human advancement has consistently relied on the sharing of ideas, customs, innovations, and creative expressions that travel beyond their original setting and reach new audiences. Now more than ever, the world operates like an interconnected village. Technology, global travel, and instant communication have reduced the barriers that once kept societies separate. People are able to learn from one another immediately, embracing what resonates with them and expanding on it in fresh, meaningful directions. According to Maher, this exchange doesn't weaken culture. It reinforces it. It gives traditions the opportunity to adapt, stay relevant, and connect with broader communities. Even more significantly, it encourages unity rather than strict cultural divisions. Shared experiences create common ground, nurturing mutual understanding and respect within a broader human framework that ultimately links us all together.
There's this new rule that the first thing to do, that the first to do something, are the only ones who get to have it. Jewish people spent most of their history wandering, but when they see other people milling around, they don't say, "Can you not? That's sort of our thing." You know, change is not synonymous with progress. Newer doesn't automatically mean better. This new idea that each culture must remain in its own separate silo is not better. It's not progress.
You know, change is not synonymous with progress. Newer doesn't automatically mean better. This new idea that each culture must remain in its own separate silo is not better. It's not progress. Maher hits the nail right on the head. The idea that people shouldn't explore or learn from other cultures is not only unreasonable, it's fundamentally contrary to how human civilization has always evolved. Every advancement we celebrate today exists because people observed others, borrowed ideas, and built upon them. To suddenly declare that cultural exchange is off limits ignores centuries of shared growth and mutual influence. Maher argues that these woke ideas often collapse under basic scrutiny because they prioritize rigid ideological rules over common sense and human curiosity. Instead of encouraging openness, they promote fear of saying the wrong thing, wearing the wrong thing, or appreciating the wrong tradition. That kind of thinking doesn't unite people, it isolates them. Maher believes this mindset is not just misguided, but deeply harmful to the spirit of learning, connection, and freedom that allows societies to thrive and evolve together over time naturally.
In fact, it's messing with one of the few ideas that still really does make this melting pot called America great. Not everything is about oppression. Stealing natural resources from indigenous peoples, yes, of course, that is exploitation. But I swear not one Beach Boys song resulted in any Hawaiian having less waves to surf. Not one African record buyer stopped purchasing local music after Paul Simon made Graceland. But lots of white buyers in America were turned on to and then bought African music. And today, Korean boy bands make Western-style music. You don't get to number one singing this.
So are we suddenly going to accuse Korean artists who perform Western music of cultural appropriation? Of course not. In fact, they're often celebrated for their talent, creativity, and global influence. No one questions their right to sing pop, rap, or R&B genres that originated in the West. But somehow, when the situation is reversed, the reaction changes completely. When Americans or Western artists embrace elements from other cultures, it's no longer called appreciation. It's labeled appropriation. That inconsistency exposes a clear double standard. Cultural exchange seems acceptable in one direction but controversial in the other. It creates an uneven playing field where some people are free to explore and express themselves while others are criticized for doing the exact same thing. If culture is meant to bring people together, then these selective rules only divide us. True cultural exchange should be a two-way street, not a one-sided privilege.
That's the great thing about cultural mixing. It makes things better for everyone. BTS can be a hit in America, and I can get kimchi on a taco. Isn't that better than everyone walling itself off from outsiders? I thought walls were supposed to be bad. But we're living now in a world where straight actors are told they can't play gay roles, and white novelists aren't allowed to imagine what it would be like to be a Mexican immigrant, even though trying to inhabit the life of someone else is almost the very definition of empathy, the bedrock of liberalism. And by the way, if anyone deserves to bitch about stealing in the Olympics, it's the horses in the equestrian events who have to watch humans get medals for everything.
In the end, Maher's argument cuts through the noise and exposes the contradiction at the heart of woke outrage culture. What began as a movement claiming to promote fairness and inclusion has in many cases turned into a culture of surveillance, judgment, and selective outrage. Instead of encouraging open dialogue, it punishes curiosity. Instead of celebrating cultural exchange, it polices it. And instead of bringing people together, it creates new lines of division. Maher reminds us that progress has never come from fear or restriction, but from openness, exploration, and the freedom to learn from one another. Cultures grow by being shared, not locked away. People grow by making mistakes, not by pretending to be perfect. And societies grow stronger when they allow debate, disagreement, and diverse perspectives. In the end, common sense must prevail over ideology because unity is built through connection, not control or enforced silence. And this brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next.